I'm Greg Skilling. I'm here with Dan Blanchard. You're the president of the Louisville Tea Party, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You just gave a speech and you were talking about some censorship issues with the Constitution. Can you elaborate on those?
Wilder Publications in 2007 decided to mass produce copies of the Constitution which would then be distributed far and wide with a disclaimer or a warning label, as it were, on the outside before you actually get to the text of the Constitution itself. And it basically cautions parents from allowing their children to read it without explaining essentially how much times have changed culturally since that was written and agreed upon in 1787.
Okay. What is your specific objection that they put the disclaimer? Do you think that denigrates the Constitution?
I believe that there is an agenda involved. The purpose for my comments a few moments ago were to indicate these were deeply insightful and extremely brilliant men who founded and actually created a country. And it is the epitome of arrogance to believe that just because there have been cultural changes, yes, there obviously are advances in technology, yes, there are other things about our circumstances and our surroundings that may change, but human nature is constant through the centuries, and therefore their words are just as viable and valuable and alive today, just as they are, left unedited and unaltered as they were at the time they were originally written.
Do you think it could have been that Wilder Publications' intent was to address specific things like the 3/5 of a human being or things like that basically treated African Americans as non-human and denied women the right to vote? Do you think that maybe that's what they were getting at, and that they didn't want children to take it verbatim like the Founding Fathers, or that that's okay today, that vision is okay?
Well, you'd have to ask Wilder Publications what their intentions were. I can't speak about what their intentions were.
First of all, let me just start out by saying this is Greg Skilling, the Louisville Independent Examiner, and I have Warren Lapine, who is the president and owner of Wilder Publications. Is that correct, sir? Okay. Mr. Lapine, you're aware of the controversy, and it.
It'd be hard not to be, yes.
Right. I've seen the responses on Amazon, and I guess you've got quite a few emails and whatnot through your own personal website. Is that correct? Couple of hundred. Now, Fox News broke the story on June 9th, and I believe I sent you a link to that story. Did you have a chance to look at that?
I'd seen the story before. I mean, essentially, they picked it up from a conservative blogger, and nobody ever contacted me to see what it was we were actually trying to do.
Okay, so at the end of the Fox News story, published on June 9th, it says that they attempted to get a hold of you, but were unable. So you're saying that no one from Fox News ever attempted to get a hold of you?
They attempted to get a hold of me after they did that, and they did get a hold of me. In fact, I'm extremely easy to get a hold of. So, as far as being able to find me on Facebook or go to our website, those sorts of things, they didn't do even the most basic of reporting work. They just probably maybe did an any-who search, and that wouldn't have turned me up because we're not listed for the whole world to see. But any business that wants to get a hold of us should have no trouble at all. And they didn't ultimately when they took some time.
What happened at that time when you talked to Fox News?
Well, they sent me an email, and I responded to the email, and they just put that on as an addendum that went out later.
Okay.
Basically, where we're saying that we weren't attempting to tell anyone how to read the Constitution. It was a general disclaimer that went on all of our books.
Okay, and that they Fox News printed that story?
They'd already printed the other one, but they did that as a follow-up.
They did do a follow-up on that, and then
Alan Combs' people contacted me, as did Neil Cavuto's people and Laura Ingraham's people, and we turned down the Cavuto interview because it would have been on television. We were starting to get threats, and I did the Combs because it was radio.
Okay, so people were actually
after it had been broken, and what really did it was when Glenn Beck mentioned it on his television program, and of course nobody from the Beck bothered to say anything mean, by that point, everybody knew how to get us because even Combs had scooped back.
Wow.
It would have been easy for the Beck people to get in touch with us because they had the phone number by then.
So people were actually threatening you over this.
Yes.
Did the disclaimer? I noticed the disclaimer had a copyright of 2007. Was that disclaimer put on other classic works besides
All of our books? It was on every classic book that we ever published, and well, it was on the first 10 or 15. Then we started getting complaints because the books didn't represent today's values, and then we put that disclaimer on there to stop complaints, basically from liberal people who didn't like some of the language of a book that was a couple hundred years old.
Okay.
And then after selling 50,000 copies of the Constitution without a single complaint, a blogger decided he was upset, Fox decided they were upset, and Glenn Beck told his people they were upset, and then they all got upset.
Okay.
But none of them had been upset until that point.
Right. That's very interesting, Warren, because I was at a Tea Party event covering it in Frankfort, Kentucky, and the president of the Louisville Tea Party, Dan Blanchard, gave a speech talking about Wilder Publications and the disclaimer. And this was on July 10th, so this was well after. And so the story is still making the rounds.
And people are still ignoring everything we have to say about it.
At no time did you ever single out the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence.
Nope. Nope, but they sure made it sound like we did. You know, we tried to point out that when you go to a movie, every movie you'll ever see says that there's no similarity was intended between any character, living or dead. And any similarity that is there is purely coincidental. And that includes in the historical dramas. It's just a general disclaimer that goes on regardless of whether or not they fit.
Has this hurt your business, Warren? Has this affected?
No, not in the least. These people weren't buying our books to begin with. The only way that a boycott can work is if the people boycotting you were actually your customers to begin with.
Okay. All righty.
No, in fact, the book that seems to have gotten the most out of it is we also published The Consciousness of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater, and the sales have gone way up on that book.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad that none of this has affected your business. Like I said, best of luck to you, and we'll try and get this out here in the next day or so. And
Thank you.
hopefully the readers will begin to see this in a little bit more realistic perspective.
All right, well, I appreciate that.
All right, thanks again, Warren. I appreciate your time.
Okay, you got it.
All right, bye-bye.